Concerns about the Delta variant caused the Dow to plummet 700 points today. We're going to keep an eye on this throughout the week. But, Lindsay, remember on Friday, right before the end of the day, we talked about this then. President Biden walked over to a group of reporters. He was asked about the role of Facebook and other social media platforms, and he said, they're killing people. Well, guess what? It didn't take long for him to backtrack. Watch this.
COVID misinformation. What's your message to platforms like Facebook?
They're killing people. 60% of the misinformation came from 12 individuals. Facebook isn't killing people. These 12 people are out there giving misinformation. Anyone listening to it is getting hurt by it. It's killing people.
Okay, so 12 people, and we're all going to be in trouble because of it. Unbelievable. We'll get to that a lot later. He said he actually hopes Facebook isn't offended, which I'm not really sure how they couldn't be. You just literally called them killers. But clearly all the people that he's hired from Facebook and Silicon Valley to be part of his White House, as well as, you know, all those campaign contributions, probably convinced him over the weekend to walk a lot of that back.
Absolutely. I'm sure he was hearing from a lot of them Friday saying, hey, we support you. You just called us murderers. What's this all about? You have to say something come Monday, which he did, Sean. But after President Biden made those comments about Facebook killing people, the media, they went crazy about the story. It gave them sort of a launching pad to make some overly biased comments about the vaccine. Listen to this.
If we had had the pushback for vaccines the way we're seeing on certain media, I don't think it would have been possible at all to not only eradicate smallpox, we probably would still have smallpox.
Do you think conservative media like Fox News are doing the same? Are they killing people too with rhetoric like you just heard?
When you look through that vaccines kill hashtag, it gets really sad. You see lonely people trying to connect with one another by sharing lies, forming community around those lies.
Unbelievable. In some of those segments, Lindsay, that we didn't get to, they called out other media outlets like Newsmax. Here's the thing that's so interesting. They are state TV. They tell you exactly what you have to do and think. But us, on this show, on this network, I think we help people make their own decisions. We're not here to tell you what to think or do. That's not the case over at a lot of those left-leaning outlets. They want you to do what they tell you to do and don't ask questions. Speaking of, though, you saw in that last clip, Brian Stetler over there at CNN, he had Michael Wolff, the journalist, I don't know what you even call him, it's really not a journalist, but he's written all those negative books about President Trump. Stelter had him as a guest on the show over the weekend talking about biased coverage, and watch this interaction that happens.
And you have a a monopoly on truth. You know exactly how things are supposed to be done. You are one of the reasons people can't stand the media. Sorry.
How smug. He just laughs at him. But it's funny. I mean, that's one guy calling out another, so-called journalist saying, you're the problem. And he laughs at him, probably making it even worse. Well, here to weigh in on all of this is Kentucky Congressman James Comer. Congressman, thanks for coming back.
Always a pleasure to be on your show, Sean.
Well, I appreciate having you. It's funny. When I listened to this debate and I saw all that coverage that happens, it was President Biden and Vice President Harris that spread vaccine skepticism when President Trump was in office. Take a look at this.
If the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
President Trump has promised a coronavirus vaccine by the end of the year or maybe sooner. Would you trust that vaccine?
I think that we have learned since this pandemic started, but really before that, that there's very little that we can trust that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth.
The only reason people question the vaccine now is because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, so the guy who literally did warp speed is the guy and invented it, got it done, is the one guy they can't trust. That doesn't make any sense. And when asked about inviting President Trump to do a PSA on vaccines today, this is what White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said.
We've seen almost every former president play a role in putting out a PSA, making sure people understood in the country that the vaccine is safe and effective. We don't believe that requires an embroidered invitation.
But Congressman, see, here's the thing that I want to get to. We've brought this up in the show before. When they did the other former presidents, they didn't invite Trump. They didn't invite him. I was talking to a journalist today about the outreach on the right by the Biden administration. They don't come on Newsmax. They don't do right-leaning programming. And then they go around and talk about how no one's taking it as seriously as they would like. But they won't even engage with folks that aren't doing patty cake with them.
You're exactly right, Sean. And what you showed that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said during the campaign were very irresponsible, and it showed a true lack of leadership. Now that they became president and vice president and inherited the great success that Donald Trump had with Operation Warp Speed, then everything's fine. And with respect to social media, you know, the big tech companies, they censor conservatives, but when Kamala Harris and Joe Biden say things that are very harmful to the cause of getting people vaccinated, they're just fine with that. And of course, the liberal media is going to defend the social media big tech companies. So it's very discouraging what's happening out there. And that's one reason that there's so much confusion out there as to whether or not people should be vaccinated.
You know, Congressman, we saw two more Texas Democrats, those ones who ran away so they didn't have to vote there in Texas, have come down with COVID-19, making it 5. They claim this shows that there's sacrifice for democracy. But the interesting point of it is they actually met with Vice President Kamala Harris last week. The vice president says she's not quarantining and her team will not be at risk because she's vaccinated. But it makes me wonder if this was flipped and if this was a Republican vice president. Do you think the media would be losing their mind over this?
They would absolutely be losing their mind over that. If that had been Mike Pence, that's all we would be seeing on the news right now. The fact that Kamala Harris met with the Texas legislators who were getting paid and not at work. They flew on a plane without wearing masks, even though they've required everyone to wear a mask everywhere they go, even outside, for the past year and a half. Now that we've learned that 5 of them have tested positive for COVID and they were around the vice president, the liberal media doesn't have a problem with that. It just shows the hypocrisy of liberal Democrats in power, not just in Washington, D.C., but now we see in state houses like Texas. So it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing to see the lack of liberal media outrage over this whole act of irresponsibility demonstrated by the Texas legislators.
Well, speaking of those legislators, Senator Lindsey Graham is suggesting that Republicans just leave D.C., just like they did to stop the vote on the infrastructure bills. I get his point here. I think it's cute by half because I think that these Democrats from Texas didn't do their job, and we should not encourage Republicans to be like them. We should stay and fight.
I agree. We should stay and fight. And one of the biggest problems we hear from employers all around America right now is that they can't find workers to come show up for work. And then we have Democrat leaders leaving work, taking their paycheck. And it's just a terrible example to set for the world. We should all show up for work, especially if we're working for the taxpayers, and fight. And I know it's an uphill battle fighting against the Democrats. I understand Lindsey Graham's frustration. I share his frustration because they just have a few more votes than we have. But we need to stick together. The polling that we're seeing today shows that every American is concerned about inflation. Every American realizes the Biden policies are creating inflation. They're paying people not to work. They're creating an open border. They're increasing crime in our big cities. So there are a lot of problems in the world right now in America, and the Democrats just aren't up to the challenge. I think the American people are realizing that.
And they want to jam more in that infrastructure bill. There was an interview with CNN on State of the Union with Senator Amy Klobuchar, and she suggested passing the voting rights bill with election infrastructure into it. Congressman, it feels like they just want to jam everything they can into this social infrastructure. Do you think people are actually going to vote for that? Only about 30 seconds left.
I hope not. You know, every bill the Democrats have tried to pass since Joe Biden became president, it changes the labor laws. It deals with social issues. They try to stick the Green New Deal in it. The infrastructure bill should be about infrastructure, and hopefully every Republican will stick on that.
It's interesting. Lindsay and I were talking about this before. It seems like in the Democrats' lexicon, everything's either racist or it's infrastructure, but there's no in between. Congressman Comer, thank you for being with us. I always appreciate it.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.